Adam,
How you doing,
Adam
pal?
Goldberg, man, this is phenomenal. This is awesome. I'm really excited about this.
I'm happy to be here.
So, welcome to the Hell Fucking Yeah podcast.
Uh-huh.
First things first, Adam, how are you?
Well, ha. I'm all right. I'm all right. You know, it's been a hectic time. We're about to go back to LA. We've been living in New York, but we were thinking we were going to maybe go back for the summer, but we only have time to go back for a month. So things are a little bit crazy. But other than that, I would say I can't complain, except I'm constantly complaining. So.
Yeah, I totally hear that. And yeah, I'm in New York now. I'm on Long Island. I don't know if that counts,
Yeah.
but
well, actually, yeah, I'm in, so I don't know if that counts either.
Okay, nice. Yeah. That's nice.
Yeah, it's nice up here.
New York City is one of those places where I like to visit,
Yeah,
for a short period of time, and go home. I love it. I love the city, but it's overwhelming. It's a lot.
No, I know. I've been fighting this battle like since I was a kid. I mean, I'm from LA, but I used to love New York, and then I went to school. Very briefly, I went to Sarah Lawrence, which is actually just across the river here, in Bronxville, and would go into the city, and then I dropped out of college, and then went back home, and then came back out here really to live when I was about 30, and then ever since then, it's almost always for work, but ever since then, I just find myself just vacillating, going back and forth. I've had like 100 apartments. Places in New York, and always end up sort of fleeing for one reason or another. But all the work I do ends up being out here. So I end up invariably every 2 years having to find a place. And in this particular instance, it's now going on like the third season of the show. And my whole family's uprooted, and so we're just we're trying to figure out exactly like whether we're officially bi-coastal or whether we live here or whether we live in LA. It's unclear.
Right. Now you're filming a show now. Can you talk about it at all?
Yeah, I've been doing this show called The Equalizer, which is the Equalizer.
Yeah. Now that was the Denzel Washington movie, right?
Right. Well, it was originally a TV show in the 80s, and then the Denzel Washington show the Denzel Washington movie was based on that, and then this is based, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's more based on the TV show, because it's just a CBS, sort of procedural TV show, but instead of Denzel, and I forget the name of the guy who's some Equalizer TV heads are gonna, of course, lambaste me for not knowing that. What the hell is his name? Anyway, it's Queen Latifah is playing the Equalizer. So.
Okay. Yes. I haven't seen it, but I need to check that out.
Nor have I.
I haven't seen it, but I do want to congratulate you on 10 seasons of the Goldbergs.
Oh God!
Terrible joke.
It's incredible. That show is like a zombie. I mean, it's incredible.
It won't stop. That's right.
No, it's unbelievable. The guy hasn't even been on the show for like the last 2 seasons or something like that.
Yeah, he got kicked off, right? The father, right?
No. I mean the creator of the show.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. He's not even running the show. So it's I think it just got picked for like an 11th season or something like that.
Right. The reason I even brought that up is because, I told my dad the other day, I'm like, oh, I have Adam Goldberg coming on the show. I'm like, he's, like a huge guest. And he's like, oh, yeah, I know him from the Goldbergs. I'm like, no. No. And then I showed him a picture and like, oh, yeah. And now if my dad knows who you are, you've made it, because
right.
He knows like 10 people.
Yeah, no, it, so when that show was first picked up, I had said to some people in my world, my representatives and that sort of thing, I was like, I think this is going to pose like a problem, not because Adam, it's a very long story, and then we had this, I guess what's known as a Twitter feud, and then I got some sort of bad press for because some sort of fangirl who was writing for the Hollywood Reporter wrote an article about it. But it's all a bit ugly. But yeah, essentially my contention was that, so his name is Adam F. Goldberg,
right?
And he had to put the F in his name because I was in the Writers Guild longer than he had been in the Writers Guild, and so he had added that name, but each time he would do a pilot every year, before he got some success, it would be called the Untitled Adam Goldberg Project. And this went on for years. And so I would get, calls from people saying like, oh, you're doing a show. And I was like, no, not me, because he would never put the initial or whatever in the name, until he legally had to. And anyway, and so this would go on. And I was like, wow, that seems to me like marketplace confusion, but whatever, it's not really affecting my career in any way, as far as I know. Although, I mean, even Jim Gaffigan, for whom I did a TV show for 2 seasons, said he almost didn't hire me because he thought the Goldbergs was my show, because that was the same year. And so my contention was, of course, not that Adam F. Goldberg changed his name, but that he changed the name of the character in the TV show, because while it was based on his childhood, it seemed to me that for a long while, not that everybody knows who I am, but those who do are going to think that show was based on my childhood,
right?
Which I can't even count how often that's happened. In fact, I was doing Fargo at the time, and I went to go see I was having a meeting with a publicist at Fargo, and one of the things not at Fargo, for Fargo, and at this very big like PR firm in LA, and we were just trying to see if we could drudge up something for the season I was on, and I was like, and one of the issues has been this kind of confusion about this TV show and blah blah blah, and it's like I just really would love there to be some clarity about it and blah blah blah. And as I'm walking towards the elevator, another publicist from the same firm goes, I love your show. And I was like, Fargo? She was like, no, the Goldbergs. Anyway, that was a PR firm. So, I mean, yeah, it's a source of some contention. But what had happened is that while I was promoting the Jim Gaffigan show, they were on hiatus after their first year. And so, because I had spent an entire season of their show fielding all these Twitter comments from people who assumed it was based on my childhood, I finally, I would tweet things like, definitely like, probably didn't paint me in the best light, but I just figured, what the hell, it's Twitter, who cares? So I would say like reason number 347 why the Goldbergs isn't my show, instead of, and I don't know because I didn't see the show, but instead of, little Adam Goldberg, my Adam Goldberg would be sitting stone-faced in front of the day after the day, or would be sitting stone-faced, watching, the day after his parents told him not to, the nuclear Holocaust movie or whatever, or like watching the results from the Reagan Mondale come in, results come in while his mother was out on a date, whatever. So I would just start like itemizing various bleak aspects of my childhood. And eventually I said, for all you Goldbergs fans, so on the day that before the Jim Gaffigan show was premiering, I was like, for all you Goldbergs fans, you'll be happy to know that we've changed the time. We're leaving ABC and we're moving over to TV Land, which is where the Gaffigan show was airing. And whatever, I named the date and time of the premiere,
right.
And he just fucking lost it, like Adam F. Goldberg. I mean, just fucking lost it. Started tweeting all this shit, railing about like my failed career, all this stuff.
Wow.
And so it happened to coincide with the day I was doing a press junket, so I lost it. And I said something on some dumb thing, like HuffPost Live or whatever like that. I had read these tweets of his, and so I went right on there and I said something like, and then he brought it up. He's like, apparently you're in the throes of a Twitter war with Adam F. Goldberg. And I said something like, look, everybody expects me to be a son of a bitch, but like this guy's supposed to be like, Mr. Family Friendly guy. And I was like, what a fucking baby, or something like that, whatever. Right. By the end of the day, my publicist at the time is telling me, she's like, well, you got to do this interview now at the Hollywood Reporter. She's a big fan of the Goldbergs, and she's going to write this shit, this article about how petulant you're being. So you got to, and I was like, oh my God. So I had just done like 12 hours of press for this thing. And then, so I, have this conversation where I'm in this incredibly defensive position. I never read the article, but obviously I don't think it painted me in a good light. And ever since then, he has a little, you know, fan base that likes to give me shit. But the thing is, the funny story about him is he's like an obsessed fan. I mean, the reason I even know who he was before, other than actually him getting like a check of mine or me getting a check of his at some point before, you know, he had success, was that his Facebook picture was a picture of me. And so my friend wrote and directed was like, who, you know, and this was in the early days of Facebook, where it was just like confusing if you saw somebody with your face, not you know, there wasn't fan pages, and there was, it just, Facebook wasn't Facebook. It was just a, you know, it was like, you know, the early days.
Sure.
And so my friend, let me explore what this is about. So it turns out, he finds out, it's like, oh, it's this guy, he's a writer, blah, blah, blah. Ends up being friends with him. And this goes on and on and on. So we've been trying to get a sequel made for the, and as it turns out, during this kind of big hiatus period where I wasn't trying, you know, where I had said, look, we tried to make it for 5 years. I'm taking a break. Do what you want with it. If it gets made, let me know. Adam F. Goldberg signs on to be like a producer with, what are you doing? This guy's been giving me shit and blah, 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 blah. And he's like, okay, all right, you know, and then and I do a big campaign. We rewrite the script together, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, Adam F. Goldberg's calling John, let me be the producer still. Like, let me give you some money. Like, this whole fucking crazy thing. And this is after we spent an entire episode of that show, basically, you know, subtweeting me by putting a character called another Adam Goldberg in the show, who's supposed to, you know, be some baby who's giving him shit, giving the other Adam Goldberg shit because they have the same name or something like that. It's some stand-in for me, which I still couldn't believe. Like, is this even legal? So he spends this entire year doing that. My manager is calling, just saying, okay, you win, whatever. Just can you stop? Like, this is just making things more confusing. Now people think that Adam went to school and with you, and it's just like, you're just totally distorting this guy's, you know, biography. He's been working for 30 years, you know? So then, you know, Adam F. Goldberg is going on and on about to my pal about, like, let me apologize to Adam. I'll even put it in part of the show. And I'm just like, Jesus Christ, the guy is like fucking obsessed. And then I've heard some other really gnarly shit about the guy. So all I can say is it's got some issues.
Yeah. Wow. You know, what's crazy is I wasn't fishing for a story or anything. I was just
yeah,
like,
well, I just realized that I do most of that. Well, I had actually been wanting to clear the air for a long time, although I'm not entirely sure that did it. And I just threw my friend under the bus by doing that, because I realize now it's been so long since they had that conversation, which was a couple of years ago. I believe he swore me to secrecy about it, but, you know, sue me.
But it was a great story. And you know what? Fuck the Goldbergs. I mean, I never really cared for the show anyway.
Here's the thing. It's embarrassing that it's so triggering, but I'll tell you the reason why. And this is the thing I couldn't seem to clarify to this person who was doing the article. The fact that he has his own name was never of course, the guy's entitled to his birth name. Right. That's his name. That's the name his parents gave. I understand that. But when you kind of enter the industry, there's certain things you have to consider, right? Like, I kind of find it astounding that the director, Steve McQueen, didn't change his name, you know? Like, what? I mean, I get it, it's your name, but I also, like, I don't know, put an initial. I mean, I get that you're not a white actor who's dead, but at the same time, you see what I'm saying? So that was, like, initially a little bit irksome. But, like, whatever, he's doing a completely different thing with his life. Although it had come up, I had a development meeting at Disney, at a big studio. I had given them, I can't remember why I was having this meeting, but they were under the impression that I had written these other scripts, which I hadn't written. The problem is that I'm an actual writer and write stuff too. So it's just, you know, but whatever, that's the guy's name. You put the, you know, the deal is, you know, in the Screen Actors Guild, Writers Guild, Directors Guild, and I'm in all three of those. You gotta, you know, if someone comes along later, you gotta put an initial in or change your name or whatever. Okay, so you did that. That's like by the book or whatever. I guess what I found to be like a bridge too far in terms of like that show was just that, not that everyone knows who I am, but those who do know who I am are going, and that people are going to confuse us. And it's happened it's happened in both directions. People have, think he's great in Saving Private Ryan and, gained 35 pounds or whatever.
Right.
So it's just sort of like, if that show wasn't about him having, if it wasn't notable for the fact that it was a autobiographical TV show, it wouldn't be an issue. Most showrunners, creators of shows, of course, they don't become celebrities themselves. They don't become known necessarily themselves, right? They're usually behind the scenes. But
sure.
When you say, okay, this is a show about a kid named Adam Goldberg who used to, make all these little movies when he was a kid and blah, blah, blah. And again, that's his life story. He's 100% entitled to it. But I think like you have to accept that there's going to be a lot of fucking confusion if there's an actor who's been acting for, at the time, 25 years or whatever, who has, some notoriety, right?
Right.
And, the example I give, and it's not a perfect analogy, was that right before Dazed and Confused came out, I was going to change my name because I anticipated that I would be probably typecast for the rest of my career because of my last name. Now, there's certain things I can't change. The fact that I'm perceived as a Jewish neurotic guy, blah, 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 whatever. So, but I could at least, kind of soften that by, changing my name to something more generic, right?
Mm.
So I'd always been obsessed with, James Dean's movies, well, a lot of different movies, but so I'd always kind of gone by the pseudonym, and Jim Stark is the character in Rebel Without a Cause. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna call myself Adam Stark. And a friend of mine at the time said, no, there's an actor named Adam Stork. And I was like, well, who is that? And, he was in Mystic Pizza or something like that. And, at the time I was only 21 years old. I'd only done a couple TV shows and Days hadn't come out yet. So, I mean, nobody had any idea who I was. And I was like, well, you got to be somewhat deferential to that because that was there first. You don't want to create some kind of confusion or whatever.
Sure.
Whatever. To make a long story even longer, by the time I decided to actually commit to changing my name anyway, they had already struck the print for Dazed and Confused, and the rest is history. But now looking back, I really wish I had changed my name because in the interim, there's like a football player named Adam Goldberg. There's there's a singer-songwriter named Adam Goldberg. There's a showrunner named Adam Goldberg. Anyway. Right. And that's our time today. I hope you enjoyed this, this diatribe about,
honestly, it was very interesting and I had no idea. And, but
it's a low light. What can I tell you?
I'll tell you this.
You're gonna get all the low lights.
That's good. I'll tell you this. When I hear Adam Goldberg, I think of you, and I definitely think of Dazed and Confused because that was one of those movies. I'm 40 now, so 41, but one of those movies
you were
where
just a baby then. You were a baby. You were like 11 years old.
Yeah. Well, when did it come out? 94?
Oh yeah. I was thinking about when I shot it. 93?
93, 94. So I was 12, 13.
Right.
But it was cool. It was a cool movie to watch at that age.
You were like Mitch's age. You were like
yes, exactly. I'm like, I want to kind of be like this kid, I don't want to get beat with the paddle, but he's like, hitting on the girls and he's doing a good job.
Right.
But you were a relatable character to me because I was kind of this awkward, kind of all over the place kid in school. And I was like, I never really seen that, on shows and movies that I watched. Everyone was always really cool,
Well, yeah, I mean, there was always what I liked about, Rick and, and that film and that script was that, I mean, I didn't think of it in terms of those are the jocks and those are the nerds and those are the, and then you watch the movie and you're like, well, of course, that's sort of, loosely how all those characters are categorized, but also just how even within each group, there are these sort of Rick had said, he goes, which character, everyone was sort of considered for anything basically. But I think that in the, when it came down to it, I was either gonna play, Mike or Tony, the other the Anthony Rapp character. And and, he said, which would you prefer, or which do you relate to, or which do you like, or whatever. And, and I said, well, Mike, I go, that's the punch I always, like wanted to throw. And that was pretty much it. Like the deal was sealed, but I think even before I kind of auditioned, sort of just based on that kind of conversation. But, so yeah. It was, I found it to be, extremely relatable. And when I read it, I gravitated right towards that, that character.
Absolutely. Would you say that's something that like made you want to be an actor? Like,
oh, no, I wanted to be an actor since I was 6 years old, so I was in plays and blah, blah, blah. And I think at one point, I did some sort of a showcase thing when I was like 14 years old to try and like get an agent, and, had an agent briefly in high school, but like didn't really work out. And then, I had wanted to be an actor and then a filmmaker, since my teens, in earnest. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you read things about you online, like, people categorize you as a character actor. Do you find that term offensive in any way?
Yeah. No. I mean, I always say I mean, I don't know if I'm using it as a sort of defensive weapon, but oftentimes, people will be like, talking about, I don't know, like, I get in these Twitter arguments with, I don't know, this is a problem I have, but, indulging, right-wing fucking, fascists.
I got to follow your Twitter. It sounds like a good time.
MAGA Nazis. Yeah. There's a lot of action. Oftentimes I'll just be like, why are you, they'll call you like a Hollywood elite, and then they'll call you a has-been, and I'll be like, which is it? But oftentimes I'm like, why are you wasting your time with a fucking, like a character actor? I often refer to myself that way when I'm trying to defend myself against people who think that I am somehow like, controlling the like cabal or whatever.
Right.
But no, I mean, look, an actor is an actor is an actor, obviously. I don't, it's a shorthand for, I guess, defining somebody's, I don't know, career in some way, but yeah, and there are like, I guess, other character actors. I mean, there are certainly great character actors that I've been fans of who I guess when one uses that term, I guess they're referencing the fact that they're not either stars or they don't play leads. And, of course there are actors who've done, done both. And I've, had leads in smaller films and, and then, supporting roles in bigger films. I mean, that's sort of how, I kind of look at it, I guess.
Yeah.
But, whatever. I'm a lifer. I'm a, I'm a worker.
Yeah. Well, I personally don't like the term because I feel like it's like subcategorizing somebody when to me they're more than that. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm not saying that
again, an actor is an actor is an actor, an actor
right,
is an actor,
right.
is an actor, and then, you have people who, yeah, who, I mean, I think even the term actor and actress is kind of ridiculous. And then, I've often bemoaned the fact that there's even like it just seems like, so insanely outdated that there's like a best, well, first of all, the Academy Awards themselves seem completely outdated to me, but yeah, the fact that there's a best actor category and a best actress category to me is sort of hilarious. I mean, it's not track and field.
Right.
First of all, just the fact that there's like a competition, like an acting competition, is kind of hilarious. But the fact that then you would like divide it into sexes is even kind of more ridiculous. But
yes. No, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, the one good thing to come out of that Will Smith thing is I was hoping it would finally put the nail in the coffin of the Academy Awards, but I don't know.
I think it made it more popular. I think it's like,
yeah, you're right. People are going to.
It's like, it was almost like watching NASCAR. Like it's horrible to watch, but at any moment something can just explode.
Yeah, right. What's going to happen next year? Yeah, right.
So I don't know. One more thing about Dazed Confused. I'm not going to focus on that too much, but when filming it, did you know what it was going to become? Because it became a pretty big deal.
Yeah, I mean, yes and no, because obviously, you can only know so much, and you can only have a sense of what something is going to be like, 30 years down the line or whatever, after having lived it. But no, I mean, first of all, Rick, first of all, I think when you do anything, you think it's going to be something. At least I did for a long time. And then I sort of learned to sort of temper my expectations. So this was my first job in a movie was in Mr. Saturday Night. It's Billy Crystal movie. So I thought that was going to first of all, I thought this is it. This is the beginning of the end for me. Well, the end of the beginning for me, I guess. Right. This is, explosive new star,
new chapter,
silver screen,
Yeah.
I think he cut me down to like one line. I think I say I'm bored in it. And actually, I think he cut that. I don't think I speak in it. I don't remember. But the point is, I'd heard of Slacker. I'd seen some of Slacker, and I felt like important. It was like the kind of interesting, sort of filmmaker that I had wanted to be myself, that I had really respected. And so, and then, when you read it, you're like, and then you sort of look at the pedigree. I mean, the pedigree was sort of there, I guess, because Jim Jackson, Sean Daniel, and Don Phillips were all involved, and these guys were all involved in Fast Times or whatever. So it seemed like what they were trying to do was do some sort of, 90s kind of Fast Times thing. Yeah. It didn't quite jive with the script itself, which was very, wordy, and essentially nothing happens. I mean, if you think nothing happens in the movie, I mean, nothing feels like nothing happens in the script at all, but it feels, really strongly character driven. So it didn't feel like it was going to be like some sort of smash, and there was no American Pie or anything yet. Yeah. But you knew you weren't doing Animal House, and you knew you weren't doing Fast Times, but you felt like it was going to have a very special place in that sort of pantheon of ensemble, kind of high school, college movies. And so, yeah, I always say that we felt like we were doing something that felt kind of important in a way. But again, you're also dealing with the egos of a bunch of 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old kids who, think everything they're doing is incredibly important. And, right. And we all had, just gigantic egos and huge aspirations. And so there was just a feeling of, it's like, whatever, heady times. Right. And I think we felt, but the question was always how was the studio going to handle this? And it was one of a couple of films that this, subsidiary of Universal was releasing at the time, Gramercy Pictures, and it slowly became increasingly clear, prior to the film coming out, and problems Rick was having with music clearances and things like that, and then in terms of just the distribution of the film, that it was not going to be it wasn't going to be a hit in any kind of conventional terms, just because it was a sort of, basically a botched release. While it was still out, me and Roy Cochran and Nicky Cat would be like, we should go down to the Gramercy, we should go to the office, and be like, what the fuck are you guys doing? We'd always have these fantasies, right. And because it was kind of depressing watching how it was sort of fizzling out in that regard. But with this understanding that it was clearly going to be this cult film, that just seemed clear to me. So it was sort of funny in a way to have that clarity at such a young age, and at such a kind of embryonic stage of one's career, to sort of know that in a decade people are still going to be talking about this, and then in 20 years people are still going to be talking about it. And that's what it felt like. So it felt like it in that regard it succeeded on its terms.
Absolutely. It's definitely stands the test of time. I just watched it the other day, and I'm like, it's just like watching it for the first time, really.
Yeah, it's weird for me because I can't ever appreciate it, that way. When I've seen it, it really feels like, home movies or something like that. It right. Feels, it has that vibe anyway in a way, but it really just feels like, oh, that was my summer. Of course that's how you feel, when you see anything, I guess, that you were a participant in, but particularly with that, because it was just such a concentrated experience. It was such an intense, I was only there for 3 weeks, for or a month or something. I mean, I rehearsed for a week, it shot for 3 weeks, and then it shot for a week at the Emporium after that. And so, you know, it was barely there in a way, but like it just had this just has this outsized role in my, in my experience, sort of emotionally. And funnily, I was even thinking about that today. I was thinking about how old I was, and I was thinking that before the movie came out, like I was saying, a few of the guys and I, became really close friends, and we spent a good part of the 90s, like just kind of doing everything together. And, we all like lived in the same apartment building, or a couple of different apartment buildings, whatever. And all my old friends became friends with them. And, we were just, it's really kind of tight group of guys or whatever, and girls. And so it was always this touchstone of like, how many years, how many months until the film comes out? How many months since the film came out? Like, how many years has it been, and much in the way that I thought of my 1 year of college, essentially, which was like, how, it was this milestone. And I always think of that in terms of, as a kind of chronological frame of reference in my biography when I think about my life.
Sure, no, absolutely, that totally makes sense. And the movie aside, Richard Linklater, definitely one of my favorite directors. You mentioned Slacker, and there's a movie called Suburbia too. I'm sure you know it.
Oh yeah, well,
okay,
yeah, sure.
And take all those things, put them together, and I kind of over the past week been watching like a lot of movies you've been in and things like that, and I came across this little movie called Scotch and Milk.
Right, well,
written and directed by you.
Yeah, right. So Scotch and Milk, which is, I'm assuming the only way you came across it was because I uploaded a really low res video of it that was like made contemporaneous with probably the release of the film. It's not even, it was when there was no such thing as HD. So my DP and I for years have been talking about trying to get a scan of the original print, which is still like at Deluxe in Hollywood, at the Film Lab. But
wow,
I was never able to release that film. So yeah, so Scotch and Milk was a film that I wrote and directed. I wrote it in 1999. No, I wrote it in I was 24, so 1995. And
okay, I'm thinking when it came out.
yeah, well, it kind of came out, and so what happened was I wrote it in 1995, and we shot it in 96, and then it did festivals and that sort of thing. I guess after Saving Private Ryan, I was still finishing it. In fact, Spielberg's post-production supervisor helped me finish the film. So I was actually editing it the summer before I went to do Saving Private Ryan, came back, finished it, and then it played festivals, I believe, throughout 98. And I used all the Saving Private Ryan press that I did at the time to promote Scotch and Milk. Right. But so yeah, it was this black and white 35 millimeter film. And I actually cast Giovanni sort of based on Nicky Katz's experience, having just worked with him in Suburbia. And so yeah, Nick's in it, Rick Linklater's in it, briefly, Vonnie, Cole Hauser's in it. And then some really good friends of mine, Rio Hackford, who recently passed away, and my friend Phil Maturano. It was all written, every role was written for somebody. In fact, the Giovanni role was written for Rory Cochrane, but he wouldn't do it. So Giovanni ended up playing it. But yeah, it was sort of a very stylized black and white jazz-laden film, kind of about these guys who are sort of like living in this kind of, sort of 50s world downtown, where you don't know whether it's LA, you don't know whether it's New York, you don't know whether it's, what year it is. But kind of based on my experience, sort of kind of hanging out with these guys, and then, in the aftermath of an actual relationship I had, and Clea Lewis plays herself, essentially a version of herself. And I play a version of myself. So, and I was like deeply, deeply rooted in the films of like, you know, Cassavetes and all of that. And, you know, sort of all of us kind of, you know, my dream was kind of to sort of form this, you know, kind of troupe of, you know, people with whom I would, you know, continue to make movies for years. And really in the end, I guess it was really Giovanni and I who ended up making another movie together, I Love Your Work. But a few years later, but I mean, you know, that I directed, we worked together in other ways, but so yeah, but yeah, Rick really kind of informed that experience in many ways. And in fact, he screened it at the Alamo Drafthouse in Austin. And, you know, he's always a big supporter. And then he has a sort of a brief cameo in the film. You know.
Yeah. Now, like you said before, you uploaded it on YouTube. So
yeah. Oh, right. So I could never get it distributed because I had, well, it was a small black and white, you know, art film, but you know, we had, you know, it you know, premiered at the LA Film Festival. It played in festivals all over the world, and we had interest in, you know, a lot of small distributors, but no one could afford the music clearance, which and music clearances in those days is a lot worse than it is now. Like you can make deals that you just couldn't make back then, and so it was something like $250,000 or something like that. I had made the film for 50 grand, and the rest of it were in-kind donations. And yeah, we shot 35 black and white. I mean, you'll never be able to tell from that YouTube link, but I mean, it's pretty stunning looking. I mean, it was written up an American cinematographer. I mean, it's a beautiful looking movie, and but yeah, it was just had so much jazz in it, and it was so inextricably tied to the film. There was no way for me to, you know, it was as much a love letter to the music that I loved as it was to these guys and to the sentiment of this relationship. So there was just no way to replace it. And I mean, scenes were cut to the music. I mean, you know, the only music cleared, and this was somewhat ironic because he's such a hero of mine, but Jimmy Scott, who was a great jazz singer who kind of fell into obscurity, but David Lynch really helped sort of resurrect his career. He's on the soundtrack for the Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me film soundtrack, but I don't think he actually appears in the film. I think the scene was cut. But anyway, he helped sort of resurrect his career, and then in the 90s, he ended up putting out a bunch of records. And I saw him play in the early 90s at this place, Catalina's Bar and Grill, where we shot the scene from the film. And he's this angelic, incredible singer. I mean, really, truly wrenchingly beautiful singer and soul, tiny guy with this angelic voice. And, you know, we asked him, you know, I wrote him into the script, and I was like, oh, you know, like, you know, what would be like the most, you know, what like transporting, you know, kind of musician I could, you know, living musician I could write into a scene that would, you know, really send this guy deep into his, you know, into this kind of, you know, moody flashback. I was like, Jimmy Scott, you know, I'll never do it or whatever. And so, but he did it, you know, I mean, you know, we took, you know, whatever we had in our measly budget, and, you know, he agreed to do it for, you know, as a gig essentially. And we filmed him singing live, and then I had to cut it together myself and sort of figure out how to cut a 10-minute, because I was so entranced by watching him sing while we were shooting him that I failed to realize that the song was something like 9 or 10 minutes long. So I had to figure out a way to elegantly truncate that in the editing room. And anyway, yeah, so that's for that reason alone. I mean, he's in it. Hubert Selby Jr. is in it, who wrote, you know, Requiem for a Dream, you know, the author. The Room, you know, wrote Last Exit to Brooklyn. So he plays one of the barflies. He was introduced to me by Bobby Pastorelli, another friend of mine who passed away. And so there was this kind of like real, you know, I was, you know, like our mutual friend, Christopher, I was deeply, you know, engrossed in, you know, sort of, you know, 50s and 60s, you know, hip, iconoclasts, you know. So yeah, the fact that, you know, so there's this whole, it's kind of an homage to that sort of film noir and sort of beat aesthetic basically. And so yeah, and that was a big deal. Anyway, so for those reasons alone, Jimmy Scott, Hubert Selby, it's just like, you know, it's an interesting document.
Yeah, I really loved it. I thought it was really cool. It reminded me of Swingers in a way, but like,
well,
a really cool Swingers.
About that is that so Swingers, you know, so my friend Rio, who I just mentioned, was in Swingers, and they shot Swingers at the bar where he worked, the 3 clubs. So that I had only known about Swingers because as I was getting financing for my film the summer before we shot it, so I guess a year before we shot it, they were shooting Swingers. And so I saw that script in his car and I was reading this scene and I was like, oh, fuck, you're kidding. Like, it's like a film about like these hipsters. Now at the time, you know, what that meant something different, right? I was really referring to like kind of 50s hipsters. And so I was like,
right,
there's a film about these hipsters and they're like kind of in the swing. It was a little different. It was, you know, it's a little more, you know, it's very, you know, Swingers it's very strictly a comedy with a lot of, you know, levity or whatever. But I read this dialogue, you know, this one scene where they're at the 101 cafe, and I'm like, oh fuck, man, that's what a horrible coincidence. But you know, anyway, I sort of plowed on through, and you know, I assumed like, you know, you can't stop making something because there might be something that's similar, and you know, and further irony is the 3 clubs is the bar where we spent the entirety of the 90s essentially. And so so when I went to go meet my director of photography for the first time, I was like, oh, let's go have a drink, because I used to live down the street from the 3 clubs. So I was like, let's go have a drink at the 3 clubs. I'll meet you there, whatever, you know, Rio's bartending. And I go there and there's a big fucking sign on the door and it says, if, you know, when you enter, you're going to be on film. So, you know, this is a waiver essentially.
Right.
They were shooting Swingers. So I had to, so you walk past one room where they're shooting, and then you walk into, you know, a bunch of cameras, and you walk, or one camera, whatever, and you walk into the other room, and then I'm having my meeting with so it's kind of funny. I'm meeting my DP while they're shooting Swingers, and then, you know, we shot our film a year later or whatever. And so, yeah,
right,
there were obvious comparisons, and that was the, you know, that was the very commercial, I guess, version of basically our film. And yeah, and Rio's in both of them, which is funny.
Well, yours was cooler, and you know, even though it's not, you know, it needs to get finished, right?
Yeah,
it still kind of looked cool. I thought it looked cool. It almost looked like, it's funny you mentioned David Lynch before, because it kind of looked like David Lynch made it in a way. In like,
well, yeah, I mean, yeah, he was huge. He's you know, he's a huge influence. There's a lot of I'm really into multi-exposure stuff, and I do a lot of that with my photography or whatever. And so you know, I remember I was still editing Scotch and Milk, and I went to go see Lost Highway. And I remember taking particular note of his use of like dissolves, and I know that had a big influence, although it was really modeled after you know, 50s and 60s film noir and like hipster cinema kind of thing. And right. So like you know, we shot all these scenes in the cab, or all rear screen projection in a rain tower, which was one 24-hour day at Sony Studios. They let us, it was the first day of shooting. Sony donated the studio. We had a cab with a fucking broken windshield on it. I mean, the broken windshield wiper on it. I mean, the rain tower was broken. We literally shot for 24 hours, every rear screen scene in the movie, every scene of me in the cab. And I think only 2 people walked off. I mean, looking back, of course, I mean, I was this 25-year-old, you know, megalomaniac. I can't believe that I did that, but people stuck around, and they were, you know, for the most part, and were into the thing that we were doing. I mean, everybody was young and everyone was really enthusiastic. And so, you know, obviously if you did that now, you'd go to jail, I guess.
Right. Yeah, no, yeah, like I said, very cool. And if anyone wants to check it out, you can check it on YouTube.
One day I'll have a proper site. And then one day, if I ever have just a fucking, you know, you know, just $300,000 to fuck you money, I'll fuck you it right into the soundtrack, and we can, you know, have a proper DVD release of it.
That'd be awesome. I would love to actually see that.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure you get tired of talking about the same stuff too. I know you mentioned photography, and I really dig your photography. Yeah, really cool looking stuff. And yeah, it is reminiscent of things like David Lynch and things like that. I grew up loving that stuff.
Yeah.
I would watch, I saw Lost Highway in the movie theater, and I was pretty young.
Yeah, so did I. I almost got into a fight with a guy, right? Where as soon as it was, everyone was so tense, and some guy like he like tripped over my foot or something weird, and like got in my face, and like was like, "You got a fucking problem?" Like literally in the aisle, like an inch from my face. I'm like, what the fuck, man?
Yeah.
I think it put people on edge. But yeah,
Yeah.
I saw Blue Velvet in the theater, man. I mean,
wow.
like I was 14. I mean, just like it was. I mean, that was it. I mean, it was just like, what the fuck is this? I mean, looking back, it's so funny because you watch it now and you're like, well, it's just Blue Velvet, you know. But I just couldn't. I remember I had a full thing of popcorn when the movie started, and I had a full thing of popcorn when the movie ended. I like had my hand suspended, like hovering over the popcorn. I couldn't eat. It was just like, it just, my friend and I had this, friend Peter Aronson, I would like, take the bus to go see movies and walk around, whatever, I guess Westwood or something, and talk about them. And it just was like, yeah, that was it. That just blew open a whole world,
Yeah, and you rarely see those kind of things in movie theaters today. You can find them if you look for them, but for the most part, it's Marvel movies.
That's amazing. No, I know. I mean, I know. It's just like I know.
It's such a different experience.
Like, do they even make movies? I'm not sure what a movie. I'm not even sure what constitutes a movie anymore. It's unclear.
Yeah. Every now and then, something like I saw this movie called Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Oh yes, I haven't seen that. Yeah.
That was a great experience. Like it was, like you felt like you were watching a movie. Like you were engaged in it the entire time. There wasn't. Another one was like Licorice Pizza, which was Paul Thomas Anderson.
Yeah, sure.
So there are things out there. They're just not. They're just not huge.
Yeah. Well, also it's just like the whole idea of, I mean, I haven't been in a movie theater in 2 years because, we're just like fucking maniacs about COVID or whatever. But, it's that experience is just, it just feels like it's just gone. I mean, my kids don't have any idea what that is.
Right.
It's just so weird.
And don't get me wrong, I love the blockbuster movies, but it gets so tiring. It's like the same thing over again.
There are just too many. I mean, there's just, I mean, it's, you saw this happening over the course of the last, I don't know what, I guess, 10 years or something like that. And for a while, it sort of seemed like, I remember my agent sort of saying like, I was like, what happened to the, like, what, like it would either be discussions about like trying to get like a, you'd have these discussions where, you'd write something or whatever, and you'd be like, I want $10 million to make this movie or whatever. And they'd be like, oh, no, that doesn't exist. I was like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean it doesn't exist? So like, you can make a movie for like $1 million, and you can make a movie for like $100 million. Right. But you can't make a movie for $10 million. And that's the problem.
It's so true. There's no more like gray area with anything.
No.
Everything is
and it's all TV. I mean, it's obviously, and look, I mean, my wife and I, thank God for high quality streaming television shows. I mean, that like has probably contributed to keeping us quasi sane over the course of the last 2 years. But
absolutely. But
it is weird that has, pretty much, at least in our world, 100% usurped the movie going experience.
Yeah, even the fact that like movies that are coming out in the movie theaters are on the streaming services at the same time.
Yeah. I remember when day and date was like an insult. Like you did day, it was like, fuck, I'm in a movie I did is like a day and date or every movie.
Right.
Yeah.
How long have you known Chris?
Well, Chris and I are like social media boyfriends. I mean, we haven't met in person.
Me neither.
In fact, he oh really?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go shoot his record cover when I get home to LA. And then he claimed, I claims, I'm 100% believe him, but it's just weird because, I didn't know this, but he said like, I don't know, a long time ago, a decade ago, I can't remember which album it was, but I guess he asked me to shoot some photos then for him, but I didn't see it because I was like, what'd you do? DM me? Like sometimes you see those, sometimes you don't. But I did see this one about a year ago, and so then we began talking. He's one funny motherfucker. I mean, he's a talented musician, obviously.
Yeah.
But he really needs to take that shit to the store. That's been our little running gag lately. It's like what his set's going to be at the store, or here the cellar.
He's one of the funniest people I've ever not met in real life.
Yeah. Right, me too. I was like, I know, I was saying that, I keep saying that to my wife, Roxanne. I'm like, she's like, what are you fucking laughing at? Like, what's wrong with you? Like, have dinner with me, face me.
Yeah. Right.
It's too funny. What are you guys? He's good. So, so how did you guys,
a few years ago, we just, I've been a fan of his music for years and years and years. And, shit, man, it was kind of crazy. We were talking like through Instagram Messenger.
Right. That's right. That's not,
he gave me his phone number at one point. He's like, call me if you ever need to talk one time. And we just started talking, and I think we were both going through something. Yeah. And we both like met on that level.
Right.
And we've been like really close friends ever since. We talk all the time.
Right.
And he's such a big character. He's so he's so full of like, I don't even know how to explain it. He's awesome. And he started this. He started getting me like people to get on the show. Right. I've never done anything like this before. I've been doing this for a couple of years, but before this, I did like this little magazine one time. I like to interview people. But I was always nervous to do things like in person or even like this. So I kind of broke through that wall, and he helped me do it, and started getting all these awesome people. And now,
right.
It's just like, I'll never stop doing it. Even if I never get a dime from it, I just enjoy doing it so much.
Yeah. That's great.
That I want to keep it going forever. I think this is a really cool thing. And he really digs it. He's been on it a bunch of times.
Yeah.
But we've never met. And I'm like, you got to come, because we talk about Domino's Pizza all the time. And I'm like, dude, Domino's Pizza, it's good, but it sucks. Like, you got to come to New York and get
that's his like frame of reference for good pizza is Domino's.
Well, in California, yeah.
But he used to live out here.
Right. He used to live out here, but he misses it. I'm like, next time you're in New York or in this area, you got to come hang out. I'll give you the best pizza you ever had.
I got to tell you, we've been getting this pizza up here. I don't want to get in trouble, but maybe I'll keep my mouth shut. I already feel like this town hates me. I'll tell you a funny story. I think all the EMT people, all the EMT guys in this can kill me. So we're terrified of like our house like burning down because they're just not going to come save me.
Holy shit.
Or save the house. Do I go? All right. So I got this TV show during the pandemic, and like, we're like, it was November of, well, that's when I came out here, but over the summer of 2020, it just seemed, the world had stopped. There wasn't any, whatever. So, but they're doing the show. They're going to do it in November. I'm like, I doubt they'll shoot it. I mean, like, it just didn't seem like anything was really happening. Like, come shoot that, like, I got an offer for the show, The Equalizer, but like I said, it just, we're shooting in New York right before the pandemic, and then had to shut down. We were about to shoot. Let me back up. So on March 11th, 2020, I got an offer to do this show, The Equalizer. And they were like, it's shooting in New York. And I was like, haha, that's funny. No thanks. And that was that, right? Because 2 days later they shut down, and that was history. So a few months later, they're like, okay, we're going to do it again. We're going to start in November. The offer still stands. And by this point, we had been in our house for fucking 8 months or 7 months or whatever. It was the summer before. So, 4 or 5 months by that point. And we're like, okay, screw it. They moved the stage to New Jersey. And so I had strangely written a TV show for Quibi, the very short-lived, very bad idea where, you remember what Quibi was? Jeffrey Katzenberg's brainchild. It was this phone app where you could watch like 15-minute TV shows.
Oh, yes. I had it. I actually subscribed to it.
Yeah, and they had tons of money, right? And I had gone and I basically pitched something to them, right? I had a meeting with them. They had huge offices. This is before they ever launched. Huge offices. Like, I'm like, what? They had tons of content, not a pilot thing, like tons of shit, right?
Yeah.
Huge directors. So I went in there and I pitched this thing and we fucking sold it. And by the time, the pandemic came, but my writing partner, Eric, and I just spent essentially a good part of the pandemic writing this series. And we basically wrote the first, I don't know, 6 or something like that. You know, they're like each 15 minutes long or whatever. Or 6 minutes.
Yeah, it was very, everything was very short on there.
Yeah, it was like 6 minutes, whatever it was. And I'm like, hey, this just seems crazy because like people have all this content on their phone. Who the fuck is gonna? And of course it failed miserably. And but you know, we got it in right before they went under. So like we got paid, but you know, it obviously never got made. But what I wrote it about was about this family that moves to because my wife, who grew up in where we are, she has these friends called the Chapins, and they are incredible musicians. They're called the Chapin sisters. Their dad is Tom Chapin, who's an amazing musician, and their uncle was Harry Chapin. Okay. And they for years have had a store in Piermont, a family store called Abigail Rose and Lily too, which eventually moved to. And the Chapins are kind of like they're like you know, sort of like, you know, Hudson River staples. Like everybody knows, you know, they've lived there for a million years, whatever.
Yeah.
And so I one time we were visiting and we went to Lily Chapin's house, and they had like a little farm next door. It wasn't theirs, but there was a farm next door, and we went and got eggs and blah blah blah. And I just like had this, like, it really like, you know, it started to stimulate this idea in me. I was like, you know, is this the, like, you know, whatever, like the Paul McCartney song, you know, on Ram, you know, looking for a home in the heart of the country. Like suddenly that all resonated with me, you know? Yeah. And it was just like a seed of an idea, but you know, instead of actually doing it, I like kind of wrote about a couple that goes and does this, and it sort of all backfires and it turns into a nightmare, and they become like, you know, they become these sort of Instagram influencers, but it just all just completely backfires. And you know, it was sort of about this idea of like, you know, when you know, what if what you see when you see these kind of like, you know, beautiful influencer families of behind the scenes, their fucking life is falling apart. Right. And what if it's the social media aspect of it, which is actually contributing to their, you know, their demise. And so I write all this, and, you know, it's based on some experience I've had with social media, and I had been very, very, you know, I've been very kind of, I've always been very self-documenting, and, you know, and so been very sort of forthcoming in my social media and Instagram, and documented my family a great deal. And in fact, throughout the pandemic, it became, you know, for I think 165 days or 365 days straight, you know, did every day of the, you know, of the pandemic and our life in the pandemic, whatever. And we're sort of creating some kind of, you know, document about our experience in it. Anyway, but contemporaneously, or, you know, concurrently, I'm writing this show about a couple who's sort of doing that. And it ends up being somewhat prophetic because this show comes along, they say they're shooting in New Jersey. I'm like, fuck it, let's like live the show and let's like move there. And then it's 15 minutes from your parents, and it's 30 minutes from the set. And little did I know, a year later, they would move the set to Greenpoint, and my commute would now be an hour and a half. And it's a complete fucking nightmare. And that's a whole other story. But as it turns out, when we moved to this quaint little small town, and this is where my show begins to be pretty prophetic. We moved next door to you know, and these old towns, the fire departments use these like air raid sirens from like the 50s or whatever, right, to alert the volunteer firemen that that there's anytime anybody calls 911, anytime they're alerted, instead of like pagers going, I'm sure they have some sort of internal system as well, but this thing starts blasting, and we didn't know about that, right? And we moved literally next door to where it is. And so it scared the living shit out of us, out of my kids. And it's would wake us up at 4 a.m, wake us up at 5 a.m. We'd be outside in our, in the yard, and, my kids would start crying, and, one was 2 at the time, jumping into my arms. So whatever. So we go home after that. So we leave that place. We go home. We come back. We run another place a little further away from there, so it's no longer an issue. Whatever. But we go back to the area where there's a little beach there, and so my kids wanted to go to the beach there on this latest stint, and so we go there, and the thing goes off, and we're right underneath it. And again, it had been a few months. My son Sonny like jumps into my arm. He's like crying. I'm like holding him, whatever. And I post an Instagram post where I'm flicking off the air raid siren, and it says, "Get a pager," right?
Right.
Well, this goes, see the joke, and this is true. The joke about like my social media is the only time anything I've ever done has gone viral. It's gone viral because of Breitbart. And I'm not kidding you. So in other words, like none of my like funny comedy tweets, or none of my, none of my like sort of deeply artistic, sort of like, cinema verite Instagram stories, right?
Right.
I mean, what goes viral is I'll say something about Trump, Breitbart, I'll put it in, I don't know what their thing is with me. I mean, that's actually where I've been like, why do you give a shit what a fucking life or character actor has to say? But for whatever reason, I've decided it was anti-Semitism. But they would constantly feature my tweets. I would get bombarded by these fucking MAGA trolls. And until Twitter was cleaned up, which I guess it's now being uncleaned up, I mean, crazy shit. I mean, Holocaust imagery, fucking, you're a kike, all kinds, just crazy, like I have a whole folder in my phone, an album called Nazis, and it's just screenshots since Trump, really since the primaries, since Trump was in the primaries, I've collected basically like the Holocaust era, like caricatures of Jews that people have sent me since Trump came into political prominence. But and Breitbart has done an excellent job amplifying that. But so the only other time I really have gone viral was with the EMT community here. That goes on like the fire chief's Facebook, and I somehow find it because I'm getting all these weird DMs. One of them from a fucking cop saying, "You scumbag."
Whoa.
And just to clarify matters, I'm not saying fuck you to the fire department, right?
Right.
I'm saying fuck you to the technology
Right.
that they're using
Right.
from 1952. The argument is that in case it's a volunteer fire department, in case they walk outside and they don't see their phone doesn't ring or whatever. Okay, well, I'm not going to get into it. But, and this guy's Facebook page, it's everybody from the entire fucking area, the whole county, right? Everybody who's like a ambulance driver, a fucking fire, people who work at the fire department, people who work in the ER. I mean, I'm terrified something's going to happen to us, and they're going to be like, you're the guy who flipped off the fire department. I mean, just people just like fucking just lambasting me, just fully dragging me. I mean, the page was finally removed because it was just so nasty. It was obviously reported, and then somebody like Facebook took it down.
Right.
But, so had I had that experience before I had written my I definitely would have included that. And the weirdest part of it is the very last shot of the series of the season that we wrote was the store that they come to build is on fire, and they let it burn.
Wow.
So I don't know. That's just
wow.
weird.
No, that's crazy. Like you said, it's prophetic. Like,
yeah,
you almost know what's going to happen because of the type of people you're surrounded by, right? Yeah. At all aspects of life. Like New York, when you think of New York, a lot of people just think of New York City, but there's so many different parts of this state that, like,
I know
here on Long Island, everyone's an asshole.
Yeah.
Everybody's an asshole. Nobody, they will kill you to get in front of you 2 feet in a car, and they'll just keep going.
It's weird because I would always defend New York, right?
Yeah.
And say like, what are you talking about? Like, people are fucking great. People interact in New York. People talk to each other. You go to the bodega, you have conversations. You talk to the guy who, you know, owns the bodega. You're friends with that guy. Like, I don't know what I was like, what are people even talking about? And then, I mean, first of all, you get older, and yeah, it's true. You start to realize that, you know, you just like want to fucking, you know, get something done, and you know, you don't want to deal with hundreds of thousands of people all the time, and you know that obviously causes tension, whatever. But yeah, New York State is not New York City.
No, definitely not.
No, there was. I'll just keep going. So across the street from where we lived, when we woke up the next morning, the night after we arrived, there was a Trump. There was 3 flags: an American flag. What do you call the "Don't Tread on Me" flag? The
one with the snake on it. Yeah, I don't know what it's called.
Yeah, there's a name for it. But you know, that's since been. I mean, it's not what it used to be, that flag. You know what I mean? It's definitely got some racial undertones, but
yeah.
And the 3rd flag was Trump. You know, that, you know, the muscular homoerotic Trump that they all fantasize for some reason that he is, instead of a you know, a deeply unhealthy piece of shit. But anyway, so you know, it's fucking you know, Thor Trump standing on a tank, and this is on a flag. So American flag, "Don't Tread on Me," Thor Trump on a tank.
Yeah.
When we wake up the next morning, we like open our windows and we see that across the street. And I'm like, and you know, when we moved in on November 5th, so election day was on November 6th.
Wow.
So it was just like already stressful.
Yes.
And he had that flag waving through the insurrection. I think finally about a month later, he took it down. But I was just like, what did we fucking do? Oh my God, what did we do?
Yeah.
But, you know, like on the other hand, I mean, it's just so weird too, because those guys, like the guys in that neighborhood, like, you know, until they, you know, decided that I was this, you know, asshole outsider who came in and caused trouble, you know, they were all really nice. I mean, you know, like, not, you know, they weren't dicks.
Right.
Nice guys. It's just, I don't know. It's just,
it's a mentality, you know.
Yeah. It's also just so, yeah, right. It's also just so weird. It's like when it's like, oh, isn't that interesting? It's like, oh, a black guy ends up being elected president, and then like suddenly, and then the next thing you know, there's a Hitler mustache on him. Like, what? I mean, what? You know, when Bush was president, when George W. Bush was president, like, yeah, I protested against the, you know, Iraq War or whatever when the RNC came to town. I happened to be living in New York at the time, you know, part of that huge, you know, these huge demonstrations. But they were just like demonstrations. Do you know what I mean? It was like you're walking down the street and you're pissed off and you're whatever, but it's not fucking Hitler mustaches, you know, on a black guy. I mean, come on. It's just like, it's just.
Yeah. It seems like whenever someone doesn't understand something, that thing is Hitler.
Oh, well, of course. Well, I mean, you know, fucking Elon Musk. I mean, it's just like, oh yeah, right. Trudeau, yeah, it's just like the Holocaust. I mean, it's unbelievable.
It really is. It really is.
Oh, and you have to, a vaccine card is like a yellow star. No, it's not. You know what's like a yellow star? A yellow fucking star. You fucking moron. Yeah. That's very the only thing like a yellow star is a yellow star. The only thing like the Holocaust, I mean, there was that, well, our other genocides, let's put it that way. I was going to say is the Holocaust, but our other genocides.
Yes.
The only thing like a genocide is a genocide.
It's 100% true. It really is. And, you know, that's why I don't hide out. I live my life, but, you know, I'm in a garage right now doing something I love to do.
Yeah.
And when I'm not in the garage, I mean, I cut hair. I do all kinds of odd jobs just to survive this weird life thing. But I love to do art. And I don't know if you ever met, I know you've met Fences online, but I don't know if you ever met Little Fences. Did you ever meet Little Fences?
Who's Little Fences?
Okay. He's probably so fucking sick of this. And he's like, whatever, but
yeah,
I made little fences. Here he is.
That's amazing. I love it.
So yeah, this is actually Liam Neeson from Star Wars.
Really?
Yeah. He looks like Liam Neeson as a doll, like 100%.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
In real life, no, but in doll world, 100%.
Yeah.
You know, and then nice. I put everything else together, and
I love it.
Here he is. Yeah, and
that's great.
I made a little music video with him. It never got released though. I think it was too, a little too hokey for him. But once again, I love to do art, and I made this for you actually. I do like tile art. Tile art, like bathroom tiles.
Oh yeah. Oh, so, come on, that's great.
I'm not sure if it looks like you 100%.
Oh wow, that is my essence.
It's your essence, exactly.
I
got like a Nick Cage vibe in there or something, but
right. It's Nick Cage when he dyes his hair dark.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I like that.
I like to make these things, and people can either I tape off the sides so you can caulk them into like an already existing.
Oh no way! Yeah, that's
or it's a cool coaster. Or
oh yeah. Oh, I love it. Nice. Yeah, we're very creative family over here. My wife's an artist; she's a graphic designer, and
I do that too.
We're always everyone's always making something around here. It's great. That's the way to be. Especially now, it's come in extremely handy. All my wife's like, my wife went to Waldorf school. I don't know if you know Waldorf school. There's one, and so would joke she's dyed in the wool Waldorf because they're like way into wool, like she can like fucking knit you dinner, whatever. And so, but all her besides her just being like an actual artist and designer, but the fact that she's just so insanely crafty came in incredibly handy when the pandemic happened and we had these two fucking little kids stuck in our house. It was like perfect. Had it just been me, we would have been in trouble. It would have been like, what do you mean you don't like playing baseball? What do you mean you don't want to play baseball for another hour and a half? That's not entirely true, because actually Bud and I made all these little movies, and now Bud's can fully make. He's 7. He can make. He makes these films. He edits them. He's. There's some kind of weird, sort of ancillary benefits to this, if you want to look on the bright side of having spent the last couple of years. And now he's obviously going to school and stuff like that. So it's different, but but he honed a lot of interesting skills.
It's been an interesting couple of years. The coolest thing, the silver lining that you can find out of any of it is like you had that time that you would normally not have. And to be able to create things or
no, it's true. I in some ways I've been pretty productive, so I guess
exactly, same here. Chris wanted me to ask you something, so I just gotta find it.
Okay. It's gonna be
here we go.
Serious. What is it gonna be?
He wanted to know, he wanted me to ask you about your disdain for men's stretch denim ads on Instagram.
Well, right. So I must get, you get targeted, obviously, right? And so I'm on the denim and everything. And so they must be, so they're like, oh, denim. So let's fucking show Adam a stretch denim ad. So I keep getting ads for like, denim is over, or like these really cheesy ads for like comfortable jeans. And it's like redundant asking me about my disdain for them.
Right.
It's inherent in the word stretch denim is my disdain. But that's funny. I'll get that and just like, and then a lot of mental health products, like
funny, I get that all the time too.
A lot of meditation apps and things like that. And for a while, just shit tons of bra. I'm telling you, you click on one bra ad, man, forget about it.
Oh, forget it. 100%. My Facebook and all that stuff is Yeah, it's all a reflection of me, I guess, and what I'm interested in, what I look up.
Disturbing.
It really is, to the point where like sometimes it's very specific. Like my wife, she was talking about going to this hotel actually upstate New York.
Yeah.
And 2 hours later, that hotel was on my feed. I'm like, all right, you're gonna make it that obvious you're listening, you know?
Yeah, I know.
It's a bit much. It's a bit much.
Yeah. Very disturbing.
So yeah, this little painting here, my inspiration for that was this photo I found of you online, and I'm gonna
look familiar.
I'm gonna pull it up. Yeah, I can share my screen.
Yeah.
And then I know you probably got to get going. We've been on here a long time, but it's been wonderful.
Oh no, I mean, oh yeah, oh right, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I knew that shirt and jacket looked familiar. Yeah,
and now
Independent Spirit Awards.
Okay, that's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
What really interests me about this, and this is something I've always wanted to ask somebody.
Yeah.
Of celebrity stature, I guess you can say. You know, it's got the watermarks on it. Deposit photos. It's like a stock photo website where you can buy photos,
like get images or whatever.
Right. Yeah. How does this work? Like, do you?
Oh no, it's
someone's selling a picture of your face. Essentially.
No, photographer. It's whoever the photographer was.
Okay. I find it a little strange.
Occurred to me that never even occurred to me. No, I mean, and I actually learned that more just as a photographer. It's like if I take a picture of somebody, that's my picture. It's not their picture. Weird, right? I mean, you know, where does ownership of an image begin, I guess, and end. But yeah, no. Every once in a while, I'll see something like people will ask for autographs, but not really, so they can have them. They'll just like if there's like an event or something, or sometimes just out front of some random place, there'll just be people waiting, but with like cards, and you're just like fucking signing a bunch of cards, and I didn't even really understand like why am I signing all these cards, but like they'll just sell them for like $10 a card, or whatever. It's kind of weird, but whatever. It
is weird. And what there's so many things out there with like copyright infringement. Like I'm very careful with what I do on all my stuff online, but if like a 4-second clip of a song plays, my whole channel's gone,
No, it's ridiculous.
But you can take a picture of an actual human being.
Yeah.
And even though it's essentially you're the photographer, so it's your art.
Yeah.
But you're taking a picture of somebody else and selling it.
It's weird.
I feel like that's the biggest copyright infringement of all time.
Yeah, it's weird too. It's like, I mean, I guess the idea being that it's sort of mutually beneficial or whatever. I mean, why do actors agree to have their picture taken? I mean, because that's a red carpet experience. Now, if it was a paparazzi photo, I don't know. I mean, honestly, it's not something I've really thought much about. But yeah, it's true. I guess like, if you're like a big star or whatever, and like you're selling magazines with your face just by walking outside, that's totally, that's interesting, I guess. But
because they're buying it because of you. You're not buying it because of them. So interesting.
But
Adam, man, this was great.
Yeah, man, it was a pleasure.
Really enjoyed having you on here, and
thank you.
You're a really interesting guy, and you have a lot of really cool things to say. And I love your movies. I love your art. I love everything about you.
Thank you. Well, and, I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure. Anytime. We'll do it again.
Oh, I would love to. And there's one question I ask everybody. It's kind of corny, but at this point, like, I have to do it.
Yeah.
On a scale from 1 to hell fucking yeah, how much did you enjoy being here today?
I would say like hell yeah.
Is that like a 9? Or
that's 9 a 9, yeah. But that's only because I'm a little hungry.
Yeah, I'm hungry too. Normally, I'm like doing this in the afternoon, and people are already, a lot of people are in California, so
yeah. Well, I mean, I had a smoothie before, but you know what I found? I noticed this when I was interviewed. So I didn't really do any interviews, really serious interviews, until Saving Private Ryan. So I remember doing one, and at that period, it was like, it was like kind of real press stuff. Like, there were magazines and newspapers and things existed, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like they'd come to your house and shit like that. And so I remember somebody coming over to my house, and, they set the tape recorder up or whatever. And I remember like, and I've always had actually I started developing bad vertigo during Saving Private Ryan, as it turns out. And to this day, I have pretty shitty vertigo.
Wow.
I've always had migraines, lots of maladies, stomach problems and whatever, but vertigo specifically, no joke, began during shooting the D-Day sequence, which is kind of annoying given how little we're actually featured in that actual sequence, but
Right.
began to get vertigo. Anyway, and so I remember talking, and I started to get like really like kind of like it had only been, I mean, it was a while, it was like 2 hours, but like I was like starting to get really dizzy and dehydrated and hungry. And I realized that, and yeah, anytime I don't know what it is, if it's like nerves or if it's because it's not necessarily in just a normal, kind of conversation. Yes, I will get, I will get low blood sugar, I'll get headaches, I'll get dizzy, and in a lot of different contexts. But there's something about talking about myself where I almost invariably start to get like dehydrated, hungry, and listless and hoarse when I normally wouldn't. Like if I were acting, for instance, for 12 hours, maybe I would start to feel that way at the end of 12 hours, but not after an hour or something. So I don't know what it is about that.
That's funny because I feel like that a lot too. And I always thought it was just my like anxiety and just.
No, I think it is anxiety.
Yeah.
I just think it's like it's just sort of brimming beneath the surface. So you can function, but your heart rate is probably, is probably escalated in a way that you're kind of unconscious of.
Right. Yeah, no, definitely.
Anyway, that's why it's a hell yeah, not a hell fucking yeah.
Okay.
But next time maybe I'll take an Ativan and have like a bowl of pretzels and or like some almonds, some protein, and a kombucha.
Right.
Maybe it'll be hell fucking yeah.
That's a good idea. Well, go eat something now, and
right. And then let's email about all the things we're going to censor.
Yes. And
not because I think anyone stalk me, but because I think these firemen will kill me.
Yes, we don't want that. I don't want that. So,
and not overtly kill me, but just sort of let me die in a fire.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Right. We don't want that either. So, that's it, man. This was great.
All right, man.
Really enjoyed it.
Hey, Mike, a pleasure.
Pleasure here. Thank you so much.
Pal.
All right.
Yeah. Talk
Take
soon.
care, Adam. Bye-bye.
Okay, man. You too.
Hell fucking
But yeah, no, I was going to say something about picture me, you. I lost my train of thought. Keep all of this in though. Keep it all in.
Okay.
Draw it out actually.
Yeah.
Slow it down.